Hello, hello. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to be speaking with our very own Stephen William Hanna, and we're going to talk about one of his latest novels, The First Rule. And as someone who read the Interloper trilogy and fell in love with it very quickly, The First Rule as the start of a series, as a world building phenomenon, it was just you made the introduction so easy to sink into. There were so many connections, there were so many relatable moments as well for being a kind of fantasy-esque story. It was really fun. And I kind of flew through it, even though I would say it isn't my like go-to genre. Um,
Mhm.
but just the writing style, and obviously we just spoke on it, but like the formatting too, it just gets me every single time. I love the characters. Hats off to you. I've got the sequel on my shelf. I'm ready for.
Thank you, man. I've been waiting a long time for a hats off.
Yeah, I'm a man of few words, but I say those few words way too many times. Um,
It's a catchphrase. No,
um,
it's a real pleasure to share it with people as always. And obviously, I'm a different guy than the guy that is usually in these videos.
yeah.
No sunglasses, no animal cloak,
No, this
just
is
an
you
author.
in your full author
My
critique.
skin.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
skin. Um,
I'm wearing a different face today.
just and I don't want to dismiss, but I want to dive right into because I've got a few things I
Mhm.
just need to say about it.
Go for it.
D&D.
Yes.
How big of an inspiration did that play? Like where did it all kind of start?
Less of an inspiration and more of the entire thing. Not so much a seed as the whole tree. I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons player, less of a player, more of a dungeon master. So I'm used to making the story in a fantasy setting, which involves rolling in a lot of mystery and character work. And I had the pleasure of getting to run three different groups at my kind of peak when I was when I had a lot more free time and I was younger. So I ran a game for three groups that kind of played concurrently, so it all took place in the same time span during a time called the Age of Fear, and it was a great setting for it. And we kind of built the setting, all of us DM and player together, where when details would come up, we would all just agree on what we thought was kind of coolest
Yeah.
and roll with that. But we had a kind of Bible going for like to save the details, and so as we went over time, we built up this really, really rich world, and it felt like such a shame to waste it. When we stopped playing, and I'd always had ideas for other stories. So the stories that would take place in a following campaign would have been set at the time that the first rule takes place. So it's
Oh, okay.
very, very D&D. This is basically the sequel to the big campaign that I ran of what happens in the aftermath, which means I get to, I love writing post-apocalyptic stories. Well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
quite post-apocalyptic, but some stuff happened. There's a lot of history that the characters can then pull on and reference, which has affected the world and left all these things out of balance. So it was easy to jump into it. And it kind of goes without saying, I think I talk about this all the time, but many of the scenes in the book were dictated by rolls of the dice.
I was gonna
Uh,
ask.
Venalia,
Yeah.
Venalia has a character sheet, obviously. She has stats and she has a set list of spells that she has access to and things that she has to do if she wants to get more. She has hit points, which is why she quite frequently gets the living daylights beaten out of her quite often.
Well,
Because I have a measure there of like how bad shape she's in whenever I'm writing a scene. So it's good for reference. So there's a lot of D&D in it. It's a D&D book, basically.
that's it's been nice to see over the years just like how many stories have been influenced in at least like the storytelling methods have been influenced in one way or another by D&D. It's cool to see how like
Yeah.
the evolution and the connection there. But I think this is the first story because we ask the same question every time of have there been any instances that were down to a roll of the dice? And I think this is the first story where it
Oh
really
yeah.
did come down to the roll of the dice as it were, which is really nice because I feel like it just like elevates it even further.
Yeah, absolutely. there was the introduction doesn't have any dice rolls in it because it's already kind of happened.
Mhm.
But from that point on, there were a number of anyone who's familiar with D&D will know what an ability check is. And there were so many instances where it was more interesting that Venalia had failed than succeeded. Getting the fire started in the opening funeral pyre scene was
Mhm.
one of those things where it led to this whole different thing happening. And so it meant that I had to keep rewriting things to make
I,
sure that it flowed and made sense, you know?
I was gonna ask, did it ever come to a point where you rolled a dice and you're like, ah, I wanted to do something else with this scene? Like, did it ever go against like your actual like creative, I guess like in not integrity, but like where you wanted to take it yourself?
There's two big moments, and I'll have to do spoilers
Yeah.
for this. So spoiler warning for two is it's particularly a big twist in the book. So if you haven't read it, go read it. Two moments. One of them was an insight check. For anyone who's played D&D, you'll know that's for unearthing hidden motives or hidden parts of a character, something that they're trying to keep from you. And Blind Bell, who obviously it turns out is kidnapping children and draining their
I
blood
was
so they
gonna
can drink it.
say, innocent old
Yeah.
man.
And, and Venalia has a really high wisdom score and a really high insight score. She can
Mhm.
spot liars very well. That's part of her character, part of her training. And she fails an insight check on him about halfway through the story. And then after that, he's not in the story much. He kind of goes missing when the choir attacks, which is when he abducts one of the characters and is making his wicked plans. And if she had made the insight check, it would have been a very, very different story. It would have happened in a completely different order. Uh, and I would have had to adapt that. And the other one was when she when she finally faces the choir, and whenever the choir is doing something, it's got a very high. Again, for people who play D&D, it's got a very high ceiling. You have to roll a wisdom saving throw to resist its song. And obviously, the peasants in Gregor and Temple and most of them don't have a high enough wisdom score to succeed it. Venalia should, and she usually does, but during the pivotal moment where she confronts it in the underground, she failed her save and gets like hypnotized by it and just goes into the choir, at which point she'll be melted and like absorbed. So I was like, well, I guess we're going to have to completely change how this part of the story unfolds then. It was meant to be like a climactic. I think it made it more climactic that she failed though, so I'm kind of glad
Well, I
that
was gonna
that happened.
say, I think it adds an element of just unpredictability that I think indie stories really thrive in because
Yeah.
I don't know, from my experience with trad publishing, like I read a book last week where it was a thriller and everything, but it's like even though it was a thriller and everyone's back was against the wall, I knew it was gonna be fine. Like I knew it was all gonna
Mhm.
work out and like they were gonna be the hero and everything like that. Whereas like in an indie book, you have no clue. They will kill the family. They will do the thing that
Mhm.
people are scared to do. So I think even adding another element of, hey, well, I mean the dice have spoken, the conch has spoken.
Yeah.
You don't get the
Conch,
happy
yeah.
ending. It might affect your ability to write a sequel if you kill off the protagonist, but
Well, exactly. And that's one of the rules that I had, perhaps my first rule, so to speak, was that no matter what happens to Venalia, she can't die because there's other books planned.
yeah, yeah, of course.
But the state in which she makes it into those other books is very much determined by the die. Uh, Particularly in the sequel, where she's dealing with a lot of horrible trauma from what happens to her in this book and what gets unearthed and stuff. So like I know that she's going to make it there. The question is she going to make it there like missing limbs or
Yeah.
I don't want to give spoilers for the sequel, but
Right.
she's not unscathed. you know,
Uh,
some really terrible things befall her.
and to be
Which
fair
is yeah.
though, I can't imagine anyone going through this story being unscathed with just like the veracity of it all. Because that is one of the things just with your writing style. Because I think it's the fourth book I've read from you. I read Interloper Trilogy and then
Mhm.
this is the fourth book I've read. And
Yeah.
you have a penchant for just rising, rising, rising. There is just like I would consider them all thriller-esque, and there's a level
Yeah,
of
but
tension. and there's a level of intensity that just keeps going. Like sometimes books put breathers in, and there's like a dip and a rise and a fall and a climax and all this kind of stuff. And yours is just a
Mhm.
never-ending kind of go about it. So I guess I wanted to ask, when it
Yeah.
comes to your actual writing style, how do you find balance in that? Obviously, like, we could talk about the dice more, but like, is there a balance, or are you just going until your blood pressure levels are too high and like, all right, now we'll take a small break?
I think some of it at least comes from running Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games, wherein combat takes a long time and it's quite mentally draining. There's a lot of maths happening and 40 things to keep track of on a bit of paper. And so you would have moments of intensity, and then you would have to make sure they're followed by a kind of release, like a little breathe out. Everyone collect yourselves, kind of like, right, where are we, kind of thing. So pacing is, I like to think that my pacing is based off a kind of bent for the theatrical, because
Mhm.
running a game is like that. You have to keep people's attention, but also make sure they're not too stressed out. And I like to write, like when I read books, I'll typically drop a book if I find myself skipping paragraphs, you
Yeah, of
know?
course. Yeah, yeah.
I don't like to read the boring stuff, so I try not to write anything that I would skip. So if something is one of my big criticisms of other books that I read if I don't finish them is we're in the middle of a tense scene. Now is not the time to give us a history of the country that we're in. You have to keep in mind where the reader's attention is, and readers can usually keep a good mental image in their head of like a few things going on at once. But if there's more than a couple of characters in a scene, more than one or two things going on, usually about two, I think, is the limit. Two
And
things going on at once, then yeah, you need to kind of balance that out against slightly calmer, quieter scenes where, especially dialogue, I think dialogue is a really good way to keep the reader's attention, but
yeah.
keep the movement through the scene fast.
And I see that a lot with stories that have multiple perspectives, like when one chapter is one perspective, another chapter is another perspective. And I think for me,
Mhm.
stories that are very well done are the ones where I don't find myself kind of speed reading one perspective to get back to the character I enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to remind me, and I forgive me for this. I'm pretty sure the first rule is all written from one perspective. I don't think it was jump in.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
briefly, there's brief moments from Temple's perspective, like the
yeah.
introductions from Temple's perspective. But apart from that, I wanted the reader to be with Venalia the whole way through because it's
Mhm.
her story. The sequel has three perspectives,
Okay.
uh, which I think it's really common in fantasy books to have like 15 different POV characters.
Yeah.
But I find that, like you said, there will be characters that people love and characters that people hate reading. And if I'm ever tempted to skip a character,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
It's
like,
or
oh,
it's like yeah, because you have these scenes where it's like something intense is going on, and then it'll leave you off on a cliffhanger, and then
mhm,
you have to read like a 20 or 30 page chapter about, oh yeah, this
mhm.
person's just like sitting at home in the office or whatnot. And it's like, no, 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 get me. Oh, I know what you're doing, but like get me back to where I want to be. I don't want to. So I think you found a very, very good balance with that. And I wanted to ask more about Venalia. Obviously, she has a high wisdom score and all
Mhm.
that. Venalia has a unique relationship with the truth. And obviously, she
Yes.
can't tell lies. And I'm just gonna go out on a limb and imagine she got that trait from yours truly, yeah?
Well, for me, man, I'm an author. All I do is make stuff up. It's
Uh,
like I'm really good at making stuff up. That's what I do.
was it interesting writing like I guess writing it, but also just like mostly keeping tabs on the truth within all the story? And like
Not
obviously
as difficult as.
there's that line of bending the truth as well.
Mhm. Yeah, she'll quite often not say anything if she knows she's going to have to lie. But I like to set limitations on characters because I think it makes them much more interesting to write and therefore to read.
Yeah, yeah.
If a character can't do certain things, and because Venalia has to navigate like the kind of power structure in the village
Mm.
of Lantry, she has to navigate difficult people and deal with difficult situations. it was much more interesting having her be unable to take the easy path out. And don't get me wrong, I think in her narrative she constantly wants to lie and just not have to deal with anything
Yeah,
and
and
to
well,
walk away from it.
and
And
you
you
saw that kind of internal battle constantly
know,
play out, where it was just
yeah,
like it'd be easier not to.
yeah. And Temple like really exemplifies that for at the ending. She's like, I've got to go into the inverted world and definitely die. He's like, cool, I'm out. I'm away. I'm not doing that. That's terrible.
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention as well, without going too far down a tangent here, is that
Mhm.
I typically don't like stories where it opens with this is what's going to happen at the end. Now let's
Yeah.
rewind and get there. And obviously
Mhm.
on I'm not, this isn't a spoiler, it's on the blurb. Um
It's the tagline.
it's the tagline. Venalia is going to die. Um did you find that that added like an unnecessary or like an extra pressure to the story?
No, I think it was the driving heart of the story because she knows she's going to die, which for a priest or a priestess is kind of a given,
Mm,
given the first rule, hence the title of the book. She knows that she's eventually at some point probably going to sell her life for the highest possible cost
yeah.
in service of her God. But knowing that that happens for people that don't like her for basically no greater good, for no advantage or gain, that she won't be remembered or honored or any of these things. That was what made it interesting, I think. Just knowing that you're going to die is an interesting story beat, but knowing that you're going to die for nothing
Yeah,
is much harder to do with.
and I think especially like with the way the tension would build up throughout, it's like obviously I can double check real quick. It's like 300-ish pages, and then
Mhm.
you're on page 150. It's like, well, she can't die yet. She can't die yet. But then like
Yeah.
as the story rears the end, you don't necessarily like it says it's book one, but you don't necessarily know the direction it's gonna go. It's like, oh, she
Mhm.
could. Like now we're in the danger zone now.
Well, exactly. Hold on a second, baby
There you go.
reports. The other thing was,
I'd say I could edit that out, but I'm not good enough to do
oh
that.
no, no, leave it in, leave it in. What was the question again? Yeah, knowing that she's going to die. Well, the thing is, I wanted to make sure that there was something worse that could happen to her.
Yeah,
So
of
it's not
course.
just, oh, she's going to die. It's what the much worse things can happen than dying, given the villain on two fronts, both villains, because I guess the book
Yeah.
has two.
Joining the
Uh,
choir sounded terrible.
Joining the choir is terrible, yeah, and then also ending up beneath the floorboards
Hmm.
would also be horrible. Both of which are much worse probably than dying. So I think there's maybe a relief there. You're like, well, if we know she dies, at least she doesn't end up in the choir. Although,
That is an interesting take. Like she's going to die and then like going down a rabbit hole of like, but see how much
mhm,
worse it could be. Like this is a mercy for her to die. Um,
yes.
that's an in
In
fucking
which case,
dark. Um,
and also like the predetermined nature of it is a bit of a D&D ism, and
mm,
that the DM knows what's going to happen. It's just how you get there.
yeah,
But it also was like one of the central themes of the book. You know, the first rule is the oath that she's sworn to. She's sworn to her oath. She has to do it. The question is she sworn enough to the oath to follow it even when it doesn't make any sense? There's no gain. It's not for anything. You're just going to die for this promise that you made. Would you still want to do it at that point? Would you be better off
yeah.
walking
Like
away? And I think there's a part in the book where she sees what would happen if she was to walk away. And those fates, you know, she ends up like a drug addict, alcoholic, like tortured by guilt her whole life, filled with shame, never able to settle, never able to relax again, kind of like heavily traumatized by everything and without any closure on it all.
mm,
And in a way, I think the idea that that's probably worse than just getting like facing it now
yeah.
and getting it over with in a sense. And that's what I think motivates her to go to the end.
What
But
it's
also
that
because yeah,
I was just gonna say it's that line between like your personal gratification and like your personal desires
mhm.
and duty.
Duty. Yeah, that's I think that's one of like the key themes of the book is duty and sacrifice, which is interesting because she kind of gets away with it. Like the whole, I guess, lesson of the book is that it all works out in the end because she was willing to go to go to her death in a way. You know, she was willing to die, and because of that, that's the only path through where she
Cool.
makes it.
I don't want you to overlook the power of friendship as well. It tends to go a very long way.
I think the power of friendship is very present in this book.
Uh,
Her and Temple have a great relationship in the book, I think, and her and Gregor. Gregor's the worst guy I've ever written. I hate Gregor.
I was gonna
Uh,
say how because like this was gonna be my follow-up, so I'm glad you mentioned it, is that you have such a wide range of characters, and obviously you had the same in the Interloper trilogy. I don't want to
mhm.
bring it up too much because it's about the first rule, but if you haven't read the Interloper trilogy, go read Icebreaker. That book is fantastic.
It's
Um,
pretty good,
yeah, big
yeah.
fan. But you have always written a very wide range of characters. And
Mhm,
you have characters that we fall in love with. You have characters that we're curious about, like Temple. Temple, I was a little
mhm.
standoffish at first. I just like didn't know what was going on with him.
Yeah.
And then you have characters that we just hate, like Gregor, where it's like, yeah, you know what? You can croak. That's fine. Um,
Yeah.
how I assume they also had character sheets and everything like that as well.
They had NPC character sheets, which are much
Okay.
less detailed. And Temple is a fighter, so he has a really
Mhm.
simple character sheet that says he can attack 3 times in a round, and that he's very strong and very tough and has loads of HP and stuff. Although he does get stripped of his armor near the start, which means he's a bit more vulnerable than otherwise would be. Prezia, the horse, she has a character sheet. It just says horse. And it's got a speed and some HP and an armor class on it, and she has an attack. She has a basic attack that's quite powerful because she's a warhorse. Things like that. Yeah. Gregor, I didn't make a character sheet for Gregor, uh, and I was kind of tempted to at one point
Mhm.
when he is like ready to make his big sacrifice play. But I
Just
thought it
be
was
like bad.
Yeah, I thought it was better if he just failed. But I like putting in characters that you kind of hate because then the challenge is there for the author
Yeah.
to see if you can make the reader root for them anyway, or if you can redeem them in the eyes of the reader. And I think Gregor goes through like a poor man's redemption arc
Mhm.
where he's still a bit of an idiot come the end of the book, but his heart's in the right place at least. He's learned, he's grown as a character, he has an arc, which is always more interesting. I think the least interesting thing you can do with the character is just kill them.
It's honestly, yeah, like there's elements of it where it could go either way, but it is very nice to
Hmm.
just kind of to see the different avenues you can take. And like back to the point about Venalia, like to see
Hmm.
the different avenues, like maybe death isn't the worst thing that could happen. Like
Yeah.
you could kill everyone else in the process and still survive. And like
Hmm.
so it's interesting to see, and it's cool to see just like the range of characters. And obviously, this is we've spoken about the sequel briefly, but this is the first in. Remind me, how many books you aiming for here?
I've got no idea.
Perfect.
I'm going to write until the ending naturally occurs, and I
Okay.
think it's probably going to be about 5 or 6, maybe.
Mhm.
I was playing with the idea in one of my quieter moments of doing a nonology, which is 9 books in a series, and it would be 3 trilogies, each of which is like a
Oh,
story arc of the Blind Age. The Blind Age being, I don't think this is a spoiler. Given that there's things like divination and seers and people who can see the future, like Temple dreams of the future and stuff, all of the diviners are finding that there's a point in the future past which they can't see. And when you can't see the future, the magisters call that a blind age. You don't know
mhm.
what you're going into, which usually means something absolutely horrific is going to happen,
Yeah.
and no one's around to see what comes after it, or something stopping people from seeing. In which case, obviously, that's like a mystery to be solved. And I know what it is that's happening. I have the ending to the whole series planned out. Like I know how it ends, and
Yeah.
I know what the last book is going to be because the
Okay,
last
so it's
book
just
is
it's kind of filling the gaps between there and there.
it's getting the crew there and also getting the crew together because
Mhm.
part of writing a good D&D story I think comes down to the party. And obviously Temple leaves at the end of this book, but you'll see him again, not in book 2, but you will see him again.
Mhm.
And there's a character introduced, the 2 characters introduced in the second book who will become a central part of the party. And then going into book 3, we have the party pretty much together. And then really, really bad stuff can start happening, leading to the final book. So I think I could probably do it in five, but there's so many fun stories to tell in the way up there that would
Mhm.
still move the big plot forward in significant ways. I kind of want to take my time and make sure that I get it all in.
Yeah, I don't see any harm in
So
giving
like
us more
five or
content. Yeah.
5 or 9, I think is the answer to that.
No in between. Because I was gonna say, following up from that, is that
Mhm,
no matter how many books you end up writing in the series, the first book is
mhm.
always the first is always like the obviously the pivotal one.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to find an extreme amount of balance between world building and character development and plot line. I think
Mhm,
for me, when it comes to writing, obviously I'm not a writer, but that's like the most difficult story to write is the first in a trilogy or the first in a series because that's the one that has to keep people hooked and that's the one where you have to have enough balance where oh I can add here I can take away there this or that because
mhm.
you don't want to write something in book one and then realize four books in like ooh actually I don't like this but you can't go back and change it now you're committed.
Writing yourself into a corner, as it's
Yeah.
called, yeah. It's easily done. The good thing is that because I knew this world deeply already and I knew its rules,
Mm.
I knew that the stuff I was putting in was going to stay consistent through the rest of the book.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I know the rules already. I know how the world works. I have a map and stuff. Like I have a calendar for it. I know when the planets are in eclipse and stuff like that. Like
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. Because we used that for D&D. One of our home rules was that druids get special abilities when the moon that is attached to their sphere of influence or whatever is in like full aspect. They would get like a little boost to their powers.
Mm.
So I know what the months are called. I know how the seasons work. I know what's politically happening and stuff at the time. I know what
Well,
year it is. I know why they call it that year and how long it's been since things have happened and stuff. And yeah, so I had less trouble with that because otherwise, like when I wrote the Interloper trilogy, I wrote the whole trilogy in one go. And thank God, because then I had to go back and change a bunch of stuff in the earlier books so the third book would work properly.
yeah.
And I had to I would like make one small change in book three, and book one has to have an extra chapter added to it, which
Mm,
covers this kind of stuff. But I know going into this that I've got the comfort of that foundation that I can draw on all that stuff and it will remain consistent. Even just things like how the gods work, how demons work and stuff, how having draconic blood works, how magic works, things like that. So it was easier than I would have thought. Otherwise, if I didn't have that already, I'd probably write like 3 books again and then put it all together as one thing.
yeah. I mean, there is an element of it though where oh, where's the direction I was gonna take this sentence? There
Just
there
me all the time when I'm writing.
well no, I mean I think with the Interloper trilogy, like you said, you wrote them all in one go and then you kind of
Mhm.
released them to the world, but then that meant that you could change things simultaneously because they were all released at the
Yeah.
same time. Whereas the first
Mhm.
rule's been out for a while.
Yeah.
The sequel has been out for a minute, and now the third in the series is, I believe, on the way.
It's
Um,
on the way. I kept trying to write a prequel to the Interloper trilogy that was just straight horror. And I kept getting distracted by things that I want to happen in the sequel to the first rule,
yeah.
book three, which is called Her Mother the Wind.
Okay.
Uh, and that's living in my head just now. That's what I'm daydreaming about all the time. So I think I just have to write it and get it out my system, uh, so that I can then I'll have a fantasy trilogy, and I'll make sure that Her Mother the Wind ends on a note where you're okay to pause there for a little bit
Yeah, if you want to
before
do
we go
like the
into the
trilogy.
yeah, so
Um,
that you can go right there's that trilogy done, and then I think for the second trilogy in this fantasy series, The Blind Age, I would probably then write the next three in one go,
mhm.
uh,
Interesting.
because because it's the middle act of a trilogy of trilogies. Like trilogies
Yeah, you
usually
don't want you don't want to
suffer
keep
from the second book.
people you don't want to keep people waiting because that is the downside of
Yeah.
writing a 9 book series is that from like
It's
if you read book one when book one comes out, you're looking at like a decade between by the time book nine
oh
comes
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's with a full-time author who doesn't have, a newborn baby to look
yeah,
after and stuff. So it'll
exactly.
take me a while to write Her Mother of the Wind, but I have the outline of it all done in the first couple of chapters. I know how it ends. Pardon me, Jesus. I know how it ends and everything. Like I just need to do the work now
And I think
and
one
get
of
that
the
first draft out.
And I think one of the things about the first rule that stands out with the world building and everything, it's like you said, is that it's been ruminating for years. It's the fact
Mhm.
that this isn't like, oh, it all came to me in a dream and then I like wrote everything the night of or whatnot. Like this
Yeah.
has been in the background. It's been very integrated into your kind of day-to-day activities and whatnot for years.
Mhm.
So you have such a strong
Yeah.
foundation that I feel like it makes it so much easier. Whereas some people are just like they'll go into a story with I have this one like idea that I'm going to stretch into a story, which is fantastic. It's cool to see all the different elements to it, but like
Mhm.
the level of detail you explained like 5 minutes ago about that is really really cool because there is
Yeah.
like yeah I wouldn't know that and I'm sure it'll make its way into the stories eventually.
Mhm. I think pretty much everything I'll end up using at some point, yeah. One of the things that I wanted to make sure about in the trilogy was that we got a bit of a tour of Altheim, of the continent that it takes place on, because there's so many cool places in it. And, the first rule is in a dingy backwater in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
get to see much of it. But in the second book, you're in a city, which is very different. And then the
That is
following books after
interesting.
that will be in very different locations, and it gives me a chance to kind of like bring out different, like all my favorite elements of the world. Like we haven't really had a book yet that's dealt with like the magistry up close, or even like what other priests are like, what the
Mhm.
rest of the clergy is like, what Whitehallow, the big temple city that Venalia trained at, like what goes on there and stuff. There's a lot that's just left that will probably be talked about one day, but it's not like I don't know what's going on there. It's
No,
just
of
it's not
course.
really pertinent, not really pertinent to the story that we're telling at the minute. And like I said, I don't like to write stuff that people tend to skip.
I mean, yeah, that I think that's a good goal to work towards. Or that you've already achieved. On that note, I hate doing it to you, Steve. We got 70
Oh,
seconds left. I know, I
oh
know.
God.
Right? We've
Oh
we've
no.
flown.
What did I do?
Um, Tell me. So obviously the first rule is out.
Yeah,
What is the
it
name
is
of the
indeed.
sequel?
The sequel is called.
If people
On
want to
you go,
get a hold
sorry.
of yeah, if people want to get a hold of you, where can they find you? I'll put all the links in the description.
So I'm pretty much exclusively on the website formerly known as Twitter at SW Hannah Author. I post reviews of books constantly. I post updates on my own writing occasionally when I do some. The sequel to the first rule is called The Rain That Makes the River. Same beautiful cover art done by my friend Stephen Daly, who's a phenomenal tattoo artist, hence
Nice
the
guy
distinctive
too.
art style. Great guy, yeah, love him, love him to bits. It's available on Amazon. It's on Kindle Unlimited. I don't really sell them anywhere else. If you go through my Twitter link, you'll find the books and stuff. And my next book out will probably be Her Mother of the Wind, which is the third book in the Blind Age series, which should leave it on a nice note to leave on for a little bit while I write some other stuff.
Well, well done. Thank you guys for joining. We've got 8 seconds left. Steve, thanks for
Been
taking
a
part.
pleasure.
The first rule, go read it. Go read all of his books. They're all fantastic. Take care.